You've been waiting for the feeling to strike, haven't you? That lightning in a bottle moment where suddenly everything just clicks. You're waiting to feel ready. You're waiting to feel inspired. But here is the hard, cold truth. That feeling is a liar. It's a spark, and sparks die the moment the wind changes. If you're building your life on the shifting sands of motivation, you're not building. You're just rehearsing for disappointment. Today, we're going to talk about why the most important thing you'll ever do for your future has absolutely nothing to do with how you feel today. Hello, friends. Welcome to my channel, Lotus Inspire. I'm truly grateful to have you here today. I hope all of you are doing well and moving forward in life, one step at a time. In today's video, we're going to talk about a powerful and life-changing idea, beyond the spark, why discipline outlasts motivation. But before we begin the story, I have a small request. If you enjoy content that inspires you, motivates you, and helps you grow, please consider subscribing to the channel and supporting Lotus Inspire. Your support means a lot and helps this community grow. Now, let's begin the story. The view from the bottom, the weight of stagnation. Meet Orvin. It's 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in a cramped studio apartment in Rangamati. The fan is humming, a persistent, rhythmic, mechanical drone that mirrors the static in his head. Orvin sits at a desk that feels more like a graveyard than a workspace. It is covered in the ghosts of his previous intentions, a stack of textbooks with pristine, uncreased spines, a guitar with a snapped high E string that hasn't been tuned in months, and a notebook filled with day one checklists. Orvin isn't a villain. He isn't inherently lazy. He is something far more common and far more painful. He is exhausted by his own potential. He scrolls through his phone, the blue light washing out his features, making him look older than his 28 years. He sees the highlight reels of everyone else, the people who seem to have figured out the secret code to a frictionless life. They are traveling, they are launching businesses, they are writing books. He feels that familiar, suffocating knot in his chest, the crushing weight of the gap between who he knows he could be and the person currently sitting in a stained hoodie, failing to accomplish the simplest of tasks. He thinks back to last month. He had signed up for an online course with so much fire he could taste it. For 3 days, he was a machine. He drank tea. He woke up at 5 a.m. He felt like a titan. He told his friends he had finally cracked it. But by day 6, the spark flickered. The initial dopamine hit of starting something new had worn off, and the reality of the work, the complex, frustrating, repetitive reality of learning a new skill, settled in like a heavy fog. By day 10, the weight of the work felt less like a passion and more like a punishment. He stopped opening the laptop. He told himself he just needed a break. But he knew, deep down, in that quiet, honest part of his brain, he knew he wasn't taking a break. He was quitting again. It was the same cycle, a script he had played out a dozen times before. The initial rush, the inevitable stall, and the familiar, stinging shame of retreat. The myth of the muse. Why inspiration is a trap. We have been conditioned to believe that motivation is a noble, holy thing. We romanticize the idea of the muse, that divine, ethereal inspiration that descends from the heavens to make the work effortless. We wait for it. We pray for it. We treat it like a prerequisite for action. But look at your own life. Look at the corners of your room. How many half-finished projects are gathering dust? How many times have you set a goal only to abandon it when the novelty wore off? Motivation is a mood. It's a chemical cocktail of excitement and ego. It thrives on novelty. It loves the idea of being a success, but it recoils from the cost of being one. But life, real life, isn't novel. Real life is mundane. It is repetitive. It's Tuesday morning when you're tired. It's raining outside, your back aches, and you have exactly zero interest in doing the thing you said you wanted to do. Orvin stood up and walked to the window. The lights of Rangamati shimmered in the humid night, a few scattered points of life in the hills, each containing a story that was likely just as messy as his. He realized that for years he had been treating his dreams like a tourist attraction, something he only visited when the weather was nice and he felt like sightseeing. He was waiting for the perfect conditions to start his life. He was waiting for a version of himself that didn't exist, a version of himself that was always energized, always confident, and always ready. He realized then that he couldn't build a life in a place he only visited on weekends. You can't build a future on a foundation of sometimes. The turning point, the quiet agreement. The change didn't happen with a roar of trumpets or a cinematic montage of him running up a hill. It happened in the absolute silence of that room at 3:15 a.m. Orvin looked at his reflection in the dark, cold glass of the window. He looked tired. He looked disappointed in himself. He looked like a man who was tired of being a spectator to his own life. He walked back to his desk, grabbed his notebook, the one where he usually wrote grand, sweeping goals, and he ripped out the page. He didn't write a to-do list. He didn't write a motivational quote. He wrote one sentence: I am no longer allowed to negotiate with myself. He didn't decide to become a genius that night. He didn't decide to run a marathon. He didn't set an impossible bar. He simply decided to do something far more radical and far more boring. He decided to stop treating his own commitments as optional. He decided to show up when he didn't want to. The next day, the motivation didn't show up. He didn't feel like working. The spark was nowhere to be found, and that was the point. He sat down at the desk at 6 a.m., just as he had promised. He opened the laptop. His brain immediately started its defense mechanism. Go back to sleep. You're not doing good work anyway. You're just wasting time. You're not cut out for this. You're just a guy playing with buttons. Orvin didn't fight the voice. He didn't try to get pumped up. He didn't put on music to drown out the doubt. He simply acknowledged the resistance. He looked at the cursor blinking on the screen and realized that the blinking was the only truth in the room. He started typing. He wrote 3 lines. It was terrible. It was slow. It was the least inspiring moment of his entire life. And that was the victory. He had defeated the part of himself that needed to feel good in order to act. The anatomy of discipline. Parenting the soul. Discipline isn't about being a machine or a robot. It's about being a parent to yourself. Think about it. If you had a child who didn't want to go to school because they were tired or because the work was hard, would you say, "Oh, absolutely, darling, stay home until you feel inspired to learn"? Would you let them abandon their education because they weren't in the mood to learn? Of course not. You provide structure, you provide boundaries, and you provide a roadmap because you care about their future more than you care about their immediate comfort. Somewhere along the way, we stopped being our own guardians. We started treating ourselves like unruly toddlers, giving in to every whim of fatigue, boredom, or distraction. We confuse being kind to ourselves with letting ourselves off the hook. But true kindness is doing the things that make the future version of you breathe easier. Orvin began to treat his work like a job he couldn't get fired from. He showed up not because he was excited, but because it was Tuesday. He showed up when the progress was glacial. He showed up when he made mistakes that took hours to fix. He realized that the feeling of success is addictive, but the process of success is actually quite lonely. You don't get the applause when you're struggling at 3 a.m. You only get the quiet satisfaction of knowing you didn't break your own promise. He started to find a strange, deep joy in the repetition. He found that the more he showed up without feeling like it, the more he trusted himself. He began to see that confidence isn't something you have before you start. Confidence is the residual effect of keeping the promises you make to yourself. Every time he sat in that chair when he wanted to leave, he was rebuilding his own self-worth. We all have a someday. Someday I'll start that business. Someday I'll get in shape. Someday I'll finally learn to play the instrument. We treat someday like a magical land where we are perfect and everything is easy. But someday is a graveyard of dreams. Orvin spent years in the waiting room. He read the books about productivity. He watched the videos. He bought the equipment. He was the world's most prepared person who never actually did anything. The turning point was realizing that he wasn't waiting for a lack of opportunity. He was suffering from an abundance of excuses. He had built an elaborate, intellectualized defense system to justify his inaction. He called it planning, or researching, or waiting for the right time. But it was fear. It was the fear of being exposed as average. It was the fear that maybe, just maybe, if he really tried, he might still fail. When you rely on motivation, you are a passenger in your own life, waiting for the wind to blow in your direction. If the wind dies, you stop. But when you rely on discipline, you are the pilot. You don't need the wind to be at your back. You have an engine. You fly because you have a destination, not because the view is pretty today. The long game, finding joy in the grind. 6 months later, the room looked different. The stacks of books were gone, replaced by finished projects. But more importantly, Orvin looked different. The frantic, desperate energy was gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable focus. He wasn't a different person. He still got tired. He still had days where he wanted to walk away. But he had learned the secret language of the craft. He learned to love the resistance. He learned that the moments where he wanted to quit were actually the moments of highest growth. He realized that the myth of finding your passion is often a trap. We are told to find the thing we love, and then we will be motivated to do it. But even the things you love have boring, repetitive parts. Even the world's best athletes have days they don't want to train. Even the greatest artists have days they want to throw their brushes away. Passion is what gets you started. Discipline is what keeps you going. A final word. The choice is yours. You are standing at the same crossroads Orvin was. You are staring at a screen or a book or a notebook waiting for the lightning bolt. You are looking for a sign from the universe to give you permission to begin. Stop. The bolt isn't coming. There is no magical cosmic alignment that will make the path forward easier. But something better is available. The ability to command your own attention. Discipline is the quiet daily act of choosing who you want to be over who you feel like being in this exact moment. It is the bridge between the dream in your head and the reality in your hands. It is the only thing that survives when the novelty wears off. So, what is the one thing you've been putting off because you're waiting to feel like it? Don't wait. Don't look for a video to hype you up. Don't look for the perfect time to start. The perfect time is an illusion designed to keep you safe and stagnant. The sign is the fact that you're still thinking about it. That is your cue. Go to the desk, pick up the work, write the first paragraph. Do the thing that scares you, not because you're energized, but because you are committed to the person you are becoming. Build the muscle of showing up, because in a year or 5 years or 10, you won't remember the times you were motivated. You will only remember the times you stayed, the times you labored, and the times you didn't give up when it was hard. That is your life. That is your work, and it is waiting for you to stop waiting. The spark is a lie. The fire is built log by log, minute by minute, hour by hour. It is time to start building.